Hello everybody, it's Sephiroth1204, or Dovi. It's been 6 years. 6 years since I started my fight against cancer. Every year I like to do like a little video where I talk about my journey and where everything has been. I actually keep a running list of everything that's happened just because the people are trying to contact me for the video. Events are tough in my head, but it's crazy to look back. It feels like it's been a lifetime. But let's just talk a little bit, I guess, about where things have been and everything. Just a little backstory, I guess, before we get to the actual thing. Starting in 2011, I started getting these headaches. It was shortly after I started my YouTube channel here. Around the time, actually, I started. I started the YouTube channel because I wasn't able to do much in college. I was just stuck in my dorm room all day, and I was watching Chuck Conroy and just saying, hey, maybe I could try that. But I was in my second semester of college at that time, and I started getting these headaches, these blinding headaches that nothing could do anything to. And I was just completely laid out. It's nothing I could do. It was went to neurologists and doctors and everything. Nobody knew what the heck was going on. And so it ruined my second semester of college, and I stayed out of college for a year after that until early 2012, or mid-2012, the summer, when the headaches just stopped. Just out of nowhere, just disappeared. No one knows why at the time. No one knew why, I should say, at the time. But the headaches just stopped. So summer was nice, although I did a lot of physical labor, and it hurt my back to do that because there's just gardening and things like that. And going into fall 2012, I went back to college, and going back to college, I started that back up, and I started getting this back pain. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse over time. And I thought maybe I herniated a disc or something. But it got to the point where I had to lay in bed for several hours a day. And I got an x-ray in January 2013. And they looked at it, a back x-ray, and they said, I don't see anything wrong. So, that sat on it, and it started getting worse and worse and worse. And getting into March, I could barely get out of bed. I had to stay home from college again. Luckily, some of the professors were nice to me this time around and let me just do my assignments from home. But most of the semester was incomplete by the end of the time. But we went to have it looked at the end of March, because eventually a bunch of you guys started saying, Dovi, this is something seriously wrong. So we had it looked at, and there was a tumor coming out of my spine. It was growing in the vertebra and like doing a burst fracture. It was growing out and smashing it apart. And the way that the spine works, you have your vertebra here and the lamina, which is the stuff you could feel on your back that's like this, and in the middle of that hole is where your spinal cord goes through. So when you have a tumor in the vertebra and it's growing out, it's pushing the spinal cord up against the lamina. And if you've ever had a pinched nerve, nerves do not like being touched. They really do not like being touched. And when it's your main nerve center of the body all being touched at once on a constant basis, that's bad. I had to be on Percocet, essentially oxycodone, a low dose oxycodone, from, I don't know, November till the beginning of April. November 2012 to the beginning of April. I had to be on that daily, on like a constant amount. It was low dose, so like I wasn't on Mars the whole time, but like the only thing that would help me was Percocet as opposed to like ibuprofen or something. I had to be on really heavy stuff for 5 months just to live. But normally I have a very high pain tolerance, and I think it's proven itself time and again over the course of the past 6 years. But normally I have a very high pain tolerance, and this was too much for me. So we went to, after we saw that on MRI that there was a burst fracture, we went to the Hospital University of Philadelphia, and Hospital University of Pennsylvania. Excuse me, that's Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. HUP. Hospital University of Pennsylvania. And we had a doctor there, Dr. Timothy Lucas, who said to us, this is a tumor in your spine. We're going to have to operate and take it out, and it's we're going to have to remove some of the lamina, fuse the spine together, the whole shebang. So that was scheduled for April 19th, 2013. So again, 6 years ago today, I got spinal surgery. One of the side effects of my nerves being pinched so much was that I started getting a numbness in my leg, like my thigh over here, that I just couldn't feel anything on the surface of it, and it's even to this day it's still like that. It's still dead. One of the side effects of the surgery, actually, just because of the swelling and everything, is that it went to the other leg too. So that's fun. But they gave me a whole scan because they wanted to see. Well, first of all, the surgery went well. They had to remove one of my the inside of one of my spinal vertebrae, a bunch of the lamina, and fuse 3 of the vertebrae together and put metal rods and screws in my back, which we'll get to in a little bit. That was just an interesting time. The recovery was actually fairly short. I was out of the hospital in 3 days, up and walking. The doctor said that I had bones of marble, which really helped with the surgery and fusing everything together. But he also said that he had no idea how I was still walking with the amount of compression on my spinal cord. So yeah, again, very high pain tolerance. But if we had waited, I don't know, about a month or two more for it to keep growing out and completely cutting off the nerves, it was very likely that I was going to lose all function in the lower half of my body from that. He had no idea how I was walking at that point. Pain aside, it was affecting the lower half of my body, and I was getting pain in my hips and my lower back and everything. So we got some scans, and it turns out that not only we had the spinal thing, it was a cancer called neuroblastoma. We originally thought it was ganglioneuroblastoma, which is a more benign version. It's neuroblastoma, which is a fast-growing cancer that usually affects the adrenal areas and anything that has a high concentration of nerves. It can go to the brain sometimes. It goes to the spine. It goes to the adrenal. Usually starts in the adrenal area. It affects the bone marrow. So we looked at it, and my bone marrow was shot. The inside of it was really bad, all over my body. The adrenal areas. One of my adrenal glands just had a large calcified covering over it, that a tumor was growing out of. When you start growing a tumor, the body's way of fighting it is just to surround it with calcium, which is essentially bone, but just block it off, because tumors feed off the body. They reroute veins and things so that they can feed themselves. So the body's response is just to close it off and try to suffocate it. Usually, that's the only way you can see that a tumor is growing, because that shows up on a X-ray. If you recall, we got an X-ray back in January that they said looked fine, but looking at it, you can see that there's a large something right in the middle that they just didn't see. But that's a story for another time. But so there was just the body had tried to close off this tumor, but it's always a race to see if the body can suffocate it before it metastasizes. Unfortunately, it metastasized to several areas. Like I said, my hip, my spine mainly. And the only reason why we caught it was because it started growing out of my spine. We think that the headaches were caused by increased blood pressure when my adrenal gland started getting the tumor in it, and it started making my adrenaline go crazy on a constant basis. So that was a warning sign, a year in advance, 2 years in advance, that we didn't see. So yeah, if your body's doing weird things, please just get it checked out. And if it keeps doing weird things, get someone else to check it out. But yeah, so I was officially diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma. The weird thing about neuroblastoma is that it's something that usually only young children get. It's a childhood cancer. It's usually pretty easily treated in children because children's bodies are resilient. They can be hit with really hard chemo and just be like up and about the next day. I don't know how kids work, but like I've seen, like, when I was in the hospital, there are kids just like, running around, like completely confounding the nurses and staff. Like, how the heck is this kid doing this, like, while everyone else is just like that in bed? But yeah, kids are resilient. But they can take a lot and their bodies just bounce right back. Adults are not the same. Adults do not bounce. Especially with neuroblastoma, the way that most chemo works, or the chemo that for neuroblastoma works, is that it's injected into your veins and into your body, and it's runs through, kills anything that's like the most actively dividing cells out there, because cancer just keeps dividing and growing. So chemo usually just targets the things that are growing the fastest, but that also means like the stomach and the intestines, mostly the intestines, are also very quickly dividing. So that's why cancer patients get sick, not because the thing tastes bad, although I've had stuff that tasted bad too, but because the chemo directly attacks the cells in the intestines and aggravates you. I'm getting sick just talking about it. So the way that it's calculated is by weight. So kids can get this really heavy chemo, but they don't have to get a lot of it. An adult like me, who's over 200 kilograms, has to get like the max dose that's possible without killing me, as opposed to getting somewhere in the middle. In order for it to be effective for me, since I'm so big, I'm a tall person, I'm a big person, they had to give me the max dose, which meant max side effects usually. So I recovered from the spinal surgery. I got a Broviac which is a port that they can't really see, the scars over here now. But it's essentially an IV, a permanent IV that they stick into one of the not the ventricles, like into one of the main arteries, and it's a line that comes out of your chest and makes it a lot easier for them to administer any sort of medication or anything, because they don't have to keep putting IVs in your hands. And the only thing you really have is inconvenience. I was thankfully asleep when they put it in for the surgery that they put it in, because that would have been crazy. But I had that thing in my chest 3 years. Almost 3 years. It got taken out at the beginning of 2016, I think. 2016 was a bit iffy for me, so the notes are weird. But the way that worked, that since it was a hole in my chest, I had to have this dressing over it, like a covering, just to keep everything sanitary. And I had to get it changed every week. It's, I couldn't shower when I had it on. For all that time I couldn't shower because it would just wash the dressing off, and that would be bad. I had to have a nurse come once or twice a week just to make sure everything was good. The line had to be flushed on a daily basis, so I just had an entire closet full of heparin, which is a blood thinner, an anticoagulant. Little heparin syringes, single use, that I just had to flush the lines with every day just to make sure it didn't clot up. So one time it did clot up, not my fault. One time it did clot up, and it had to be changed. And that's a big procedure, but the main worry is infection, because if that central line gets infected, that goes straight to your heart. Blood infections are some of the worst things that you can get because they are very, very deadly. So, I couldn't do anything to get it dirty, is what I'm trying to say. So that's what I lived with for 3 years. On top of that, in May of 2013, I started really heavy chemo. The kind where, you just get hit every day for a week, and when you're stuck in the hospital, inpatient, you're just lying there, hoping that maybe you'll die. Can't eat, can't do anything. Then you go home, and you're feeling a little better, and then the effects of the chemo hit, after a week or so, and your blood levels start dropping, because one of the things the other thing, when I was talking about before, the things that rapidly divide in your body, another thing that does that is blood. Your red blood cells, your white blood cells, and your platelets. So your body loses its immunity from the white blood cells dying. Your body loses the ability to clot because your platelets die. And you lose the ability to breathe because your red blood cells die. So you spend a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on whatever's going on, maybe more, hoping to God that you don't get any cuts, because it'll just keep bleeding. Hoping to God that you don't get any fevers, because your body has 0 white blood cells in it. I spent a lot of time just sitting at home with no immunity whatsoever, and then I get a fever. And if you get a fever, you go to the hospital because your body cannot fight it. Normally the body is kind of good in fighting infections and things, but when you have 0 immunity, your body cannot fight it. You go to the hospital and they start pumping you with antibiotics, and hope to God that they caught it in time. And that happened to me several times, more than several times. But one of the worst things, and that's an inconvenience, because it always used to strike whenever I was really just wanted to rest or record something. I was doing Majora's Mask at that time, I think, or I was finishing it up and doing, I don't know, I wasn't really doing much Let's Plays that summer for some reason. I don't know why. But the worst is when your red blood cells start dying, because your red blood cells convey air to the rest of your body, oxygen to your muscles. So if you have a low red count, you're anemic, severely anemic. If you have a low red count, you try to breathe and you don't feel the air. You don't feel like you're breathing. You just take a huge breath and it's like that much air. And it's like you slowly just get more and more and more tired. And a few times my red blood count got really low, but not as low as something later, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I got 4 rounds of that. After the second round, when I was not eating, I had lost 80 pounds in 2 months. Just because I couldn't eat. I couldn't put anything in my mouth. Everything tasted disgusting. Chemo ruins you. And not just all my hair falling out and my nails getting all these lines in it. And thank God my nails didn't fall out, because that happens to some people. But just feeling disgusting. It changes your taste and your smell. And there were certain things, I'm sorry if you hear that in the background, people have to clean today. There are certain things that I couldn't eat anymore, I couldn't smell anymore. I started getting cravings for other things that I'd never touched in my life. It completely destroyed everything, all of my senses. And I still haven't recovered from that after 6 years. There's certain things I can't smell anymore, certain things that I without getting sick, certain things that I can't look at without getting sick, certain things that I need to eat semi-regularly, or else I start getting sick, because I just get cravings, crazy cravings. So after the second round of that, and I wasn't eating. I lost 80 pounds. None of my clothes fit me anymore. It was very bad at that point. They tried giving me a synthetic, essentially synthetic marijuana pill, THC, which gives, they use for cancer patients. It actually has a lot of nice uses, but the main thing that they use it for with the chemo is that it gives people the munchies, which is great. Unfortunately, it turns out that I'm allergic to marijuana. I had a really bad reaction to it. I started getting heart palpitations and all sorts of stuff, so they stopped that. Then they tried giving me something else, which was essentially a super powerful version of Benadryl. It was like an antihistamine. Excuse me. It was also just meant to stave off the nausea. That was the main thing, of staving off the nausea. The synthetic THC doesn't stave off the nausea. It just makes you not care at all. That's the point. And it works for a lot of people, and it's very useful, but not for me. But yeah, they gave me this, it was called dronabinol, by the way. They gave me this antihistamine called promethazine, and I took it once. They injected it in, and it gave me hallucinations. I don't know if anyone here has actually ever hallucinated, and not just getting really out of it and seeing things. A hallucination is being in a room, interacting with people and things that are not there, and not being able to tell the difference. But it's more than a dream where you feel it and you're kind of yeah, this is a dream. I can wake up, I can manipulate. No, it's this is actual real life. And meanwhile, the people are just watching you, laying in bed talking, or actually start moving or something, and they're what the heck is going on? But you're living somewhere else, and it's a horrifying experience, because then I would wake up and I'd be wait, what? and like I'd be like, is grandma here? And my dad would be sitting next to me with like a really worried expression. So, no one. It's just us. It's just us in the hospital room. And I would say, oh, and I would fall back asleep, and immediately like that, and I wouldn't feel the transition. I would be like, I would lay back down, and then all of a sudden the doctor would come in, and I would like start talking to him about something, and then I would wake up, and the doctor wasn't there. I would say, is Dr. Maris here? And my dad would say, no, you're just talking out loud, like not mumbling, like conversational talking, like I'm talking now. And it like went back and forth with that for a while. So we decided never to give me that again. Eventually I got an antidepressant called Remeron, which gave me really great food cravings, like instantly cured the problem with me not eating. I actually just started putting weight on again, and I had to get off of it eventually the next year because I was getting too fat. But like I was able to just immediately start eating with that, so that was great. But yeah, that was all the summer of 2013. Each successive chemo treatment was hitting me more and more. By the fourth one, I was not doing too well. And they did a scan after each one, and they did a scan after the fourth one, and the tumor had actually grown a little bit. It had stopped growing for a little bit, but then it grew a little bit by the fourth one. So like, this isn't working. The heavy chemo is like their like first line defense, and after that they're like, okay, now we got to try all the options B, C, D, E, F, G through Z. We went a little past Z for me, I think. But so they said to me essentially, it's usually with cancer it's like toxicity versus results, and for you the toxicity is way more than the results that we're getting, so we're just gonna stop for a little bit. So they took me off of the heavy chemo, and they gave me a month to just relax. It was the high holidays at that time, so I got to relax from the heavy chemo through September. In August they started up a thing for me of a experimental, the first of many experimental drugs that was on a clinical trial, and this one was a pill that was mixed with a chemo injection, and I would get as an outpatient treatment as opposed to staying inpatient and being there for a week. I would just come in every day for a week, and then be off for 2 weeks. So it would be like 5 days of the chemo. It was like 7 or 11 days of taking this pill every day. I would take it home with me, and I'd get the chemo. I would get another chemo by mouth, but the other one was injected into the Broviac. And so that was my life for a while. They said to me, like, the heavy stuff isn't working. We're going to have to do slow and steady for this. We wanted to try to do like the hard and heavy and getting it killed off, but it's not working. So we're just going to do slow and steady, start chipping away at it. So the way that this Millennium drug, where it was called Millennium, the way that it worked, it was kept it stable. Whenever we got scans, it would just show stability. And that went from August 2013 until the beginning of 2015. Actually, every week it was a week of getting chemo, 2 weeks of resting, a week of getting chemo, 2 weeks of resting, 3-week cycle for a year and a half. And because of the way that the chemo affects like the bowels and everything, I had to be on a bunch of other medications just to make sure that like I wasn't just having constant diarrhea all the time. because that was when I first started the millennium in when I first started the millennium in August. It was actually right after the first of the high holidays. Like, it was in between the first of the high holidays and the second one, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The New Year and Day of Atonement. So I actually got my first treatment in that week. And it was fine, but the following week is another holiday, Sukkot. And I spent that entire holiday in the bathroom because we didn't have medication for, like, making sure that the stuff in my bowels wasn't getting killed off and just being destroyed. So I'd spend also that whole time on a whole bunch of medication is what I'm trying to say. But it was stability. Again, every time I got a scan, it showed exact same picture. Nothing was going away, anything. So yeah, that was how I spent 2014 and the beginning of 2015 until February 2015, when I got something. I got sick. I got something. We still don't know what the heck happened, but it was during Kirbython, for people who remember that catastrophe. But I was in the hospital for a solid month because the medication stopped working, and I couldn't control. Sorry for the TMI, but this whole video is TMI. I couldn't control my bowels anymore, and eventually they had to give me this other thing that literally stopped the muscle movement in my intestines. Like, it actually, like, its sole function is to make your intestines stop moving so that you just stop going to the bathroom, like, at all. So, like, they had to do that because it was constant, like, actually constant. And I was dying because your body can't keep up with all the fluids that they have to put in that it keeps shoving out. So I was, it took them a solid month to get that under control. Eventually, like, they were able to start easing off on the medication that they were giving me, and, like, let me actually, and that was making me so sick also. I could barely even eat during all that time. I mean, your body doesn't want to eat. First of all, when you're getting nutrition through an IV, your body doesn't want to eat because it feels fed. But then you get dependent on that, and you have to, like, remind your body, hey, food goes in here, not here. Well, in my case, not here. So, like, as part of the condition of me, like, being eased off of everything, I had to, like, force myself to eat and drink manually in order to reteach my body to process food like that. And it was really difficult because everything was making me sick. But eventually in March, I got out of the hospital, and we decided we're going to stop the millennium at that point because obviously something had gone wrong with it. My body has just started rejecting it. So we moved on to another chemo called irinotecan. Well, I was getting irinotecan already. That's why I was getting injected with the millennium. But I started getting medication that would target like genetic tags, specific. Like they had gene sequenced the tumors that I had. In the hip and the adrenal, but especially, like, from the spine. They couldn't really get to the adrenal because that was in a bad place, but they had taken biopsies of the hip, and they had the tumor that they scooped out of my spine. And they gene sequenced it, and they said, okay, so it has this, and this tag, so let's try to use this medication that we know specifically goes after, like, gets attached to, like, that gene, so it can be a more concentrated, I'm just making sure it's not snowing right now. It's those are petals, I think. Okay, we're good. Weirder things have happened in April. It's getting really distracted by this. Petals everywhere. Sorry. So, yeah, so it's like specifically targets the genes in these things and has hopefully less of an effect on the rest of the body systems, unlike traditional chemo. Unfortunately, I didn't react to it well, and I got really sick from that, so we decided to change it up to a different one that was also targeting the genes, but slightly less effective. So we started that in March 2015, and it was a lot better than the Millennium Irinotecan and what was that again? Temozolomide, I think, regimen that I had for the previous year. In fact, it turned out that I was completely bald this whole time. It was 2 years already. It turns out that the the original chemo had knocked all my hair out, but the Millennium seemed to be keeping my hair out because it wasn't really growing back. But once I started this new thing that was still the same irinotecan, but just just cutting out the Millennium, essentially, my hair started growing back, which is really nice after 2 years of being bald. Unfortunately, I still have effects of having my hair out in the first place. You can see there's a bald spot on top. It was like a completely full head of hair before. And some people say, well, maybe that's just a genetic thing or something, but both sides of my family have the genetics of really thick hair, and me before, my hair was really thick. It was in the back here. Can hardly pass a comb through it. So I don't know. I think it's just lingering effects of the chemo. But that went on. I was on those same medications, the gene meds, for 2 years. Yeah. In the meantime, since I wasn't getting heavy chemo anymore, so that went through the rest of 2015 at least. Since I wasn't getting heavy chemo, I wasn't getting, the point of the Broviac was, because I was getting heavy chemo, they antibiotics and things, they needed to have something that they could put in multiple stuff and essentially do whatever they want with. So that was the point of the Broviac there. At the point I was at the beginning of 2016, January 2016-ish, not really sure on the date because that whole time is a blur for me. I wasn't doing anything, but the decision was made that I didn't need the Broviac line in. I could get a subdermal port, meaning the same thing still attached to an IV directly into one of my arteries, but instead of it being out of my chest and quick access all the time, and they would put something under my skin that would essentially just need a special long needle that just got stuck there for when I needed the infusions. So that went over here. You can't really see because of the lighting, but you can see a dark spot there. And dots and stuff here are all the but this cut here was where it was. So it was like a little circle. That's kind of like a little cup inside with a rubber skin or something that was right underneath the skin, so I could always feel it there, and if I laid on it, it would press up against my my chest. It was really uncomfortable, but so whenever they would just have to give me an infusion of chemo or whatever, they would just stick me there. And instead of having a nurse come to my house and have to change the dressing and flush the lines and do everything else, change the caps on the thing, I would just need this thing flushed every 3 weeks or something whenever I, or every day when I got it used, going into the day hospital for outpatient treatment. So it was a lot more convenient, but the main thing was I could shower again. after it took like a few days just to let the skin heal up and everything, but that first shower after almost 3 whole years of not being able to submerge myself in water was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. I still remember it. I still feel that feeling of like freedom, of like, oh my god, I can cover myself. It was a good feeling. It was a very good feeling. So that went so that went a little more. We changed up some medication in May of that year. I think that's when I went off the Millennium, actually. We added the gene stuff separately. That was during the off weeks. It was 1 week of the Millennium and the Reno, and 2 weeks of the gene things, which rapamycin, I think it was called. But originally something for helping people with like kidney transplants have their kidney not rejected. It was really weird. The medical team that was helping me at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is where I was getting all of my thing. Again, neuroblastoma is a childhood disease, which means that I had to get treated at the Children's Hospital because the adult hospitals had no idea how to treat neuroblastoma. And the world specialist was my doctor, so that was just cool. So it was 2 weeks off and 1 week on. But like my medical team just had like crazy ideas of like, okay, so like we know that this is like a medication for this, but we've found during our studies that it actually does like X, Y, and Z, which could actually help you here. So like I was a guinea pig, but it worked apparently. Excuse me. But so I was off the Millennium in May. We got down to August of 2016, and I got a scan that looked like things were kind of a little brighter. So we were kind of worried about that. So we decided that at that point, we were going to try something else. And what we were going to try was radiation. Radiation therapy is usually used at the very end of treatment for somebody. When everything, or different radiations, I should say. I was getting an internal radiation. They pump you with radioactive chemicals as opposed to radioactive things. But usually that's done to somebody at the very end of their treatment or something, or depending on, with neuroblastoma though, it's sometimes its own therapy. It's really weird. But it's called MIBG therapy. That's the name of the chemical, the radioactive chemical. And so in September I got the first round of radiation. It was a whole to-do. I had to go into this special room that everything was like wrapped up because they didn't want it contaminated. There was like lead shielding everywhere. My dad could stay in the room, but he had to be on the opposite side of the room with a lead shield in between him. Everything I had to be like double wrapped because whatever I touched and sweated on or anything was going to be contaminated with radiation. Everything that when I went to the bathroom, like it got flushed to like a special decontamination area. The air was specifically filtered in the room. It was like a whole thing. The door was like a giant lead block. Everybody had to wear like gowns and boots and gloves whenever they even looked at me. It was also a very uncomfortable experience. I don't want to talk about it for the first thing, but usually like the kids don't get out of bed during radiation because it just lays them out, so they have to make allowances for them going to the bathroom. It's not good. So essentially it was essentially isolation for as long, but as the radiation was too strong in my body. But the first day of also the bed, everything was wrapped and whatever. It was awful. But the first day, they just pumped me with a whole load of radioactive chemicals, and then immediately give me tons of water, pump there's like a machine that wasn't just like putting an IV of water in. It was pumping the water in because they wanted to wash out as much as possible. Because if radiation stays in you, that's bad. So after going to the bathroom a lot over the course of the week, a lot, eventually the radiation starts leaching out of your body by you going to the bathroom a lot. And they come in with like a Geiger counter and everything every day, and everyone has to wear badges and stuff to make sure they're not getting too irradiated. But it did stop annoying visitors from coming though. But so eventually, after like a week, I was able to go home, rest. And the radiation works like the chemo with killing your blood and everything, but it works a lot slower. So it was kind of like, instead of going like crashing, it was just... So eventually, when my blood recovered enough, I got round 2 in November. This was September, and November I got round 2. Round 2 did not go as well. I mean, there was other factors going into this. There's a lot of other stuff going on at the time. I was having teeth problems, so I needed to be on pain meds because I kept getting infections in my teeth that need root canals. My teeth are their own problem, but the second round of radiation had a much more drastic effect on me. This was at the end of November, so during December I was just slowly going down, and I actually had to get several blood transfusions, red blood cells, platelets, because I was going in to get checked, and they're like, Dovey, you don't have anything. And the MagFest rolls around in the beginning of 2017, January 2017, and I actually go from a red blood cell transfusion to MagFest. It's like I was in the hospital getting red blood cells because I'm tanking and I'm severely anemic. I can hardly breathe. That was like the lowest my blood had ever been from any treatment. I was like that kind of like gasping. And I go to MagFest on that, and I'm walking around. I go back to my room, start having seizures. Because my body can't keep up with itself, and like I'm going into like my body actually started going into shock, and then I go back right after MagFest, and people at MagFest are like, yeah, hey Dovey, it's great. It was like the first MagFest I had like spent, staying there for the weekend. It was great, but I almost died, and it wasn't actually like I felt I was gonna die. Like I actually almost died. And I come back to the hospital Monday, like right after MagFest, and they're like, what the heck is wrong? Dovey, your blood is at like 6. How can you breathe? And I'm like, eh. So they decided not to give me a third round of radiation. And after giving me like enough red blood, my body started finally recovering. And they decided, instead of giving me another round of radiation, we would try immunotherapy, which is the new up-and-coming hip thing for kids to do these days. The immunotherapy was a similar thing. It was stuff going to be pumped into me. But the way that was going to work is that one of the side effects is that it makes your body angry, essentially. And it makes your body angry, and your body starts fighting. And your body starts fighting when it didn't fight before, but one of the things that makes angry is your nerves. All of them. You have a lot of nerves in your body, and when a nerve is angry, it tells you, and it says, ow, I hurt. So immunotherapy makes all of your nerves hurt. Every single one of them. So they tried giving me this nerve blocker called gabapentin, which it turns out that the combination of gabapentin, the immunotherapy, and the chemo that they had to give to me was the single biggest shock to my body, and I got every single side effect you could possibly think of. My hair fell out in a matter of like days. Usually, like when you get chemo, it's like starts getting patchy. My hair just went off my body. I started getting splotches everywhere, like purple splotches. I looked like I had like some sort of plague. Everything hurt a lot. I was just in the fetal position for weeks. My organs started shutting down. Just everything started going wrong. Everything started going wrong. And I had to go into the hospital shortly after leaving from the immunotherapy, which was like over the course of a week in hospital, getting injections every day, which is horrifically painful. It was a terrible experience. I was like on pain meds. I couldn't eat because pain meds make your stomach churn. So like I was just out of it. And when I got home, my body crashed. Like I couldn't. My senses all went out of control. I started becoming insanely sensitive to cold. Like anything that was under 80 degrees was freezing to me. I had a space heater in my room because everything was too cold. A space heater wrapped up in blankets all the time. If I washed my hands and it wasn't warm water, then it felt like I was submerging them in liquid nitrogen. Breathing was difficult. Like I would breathe in, and because moving air is cool, breathing in felt like stabbing my lungs with icicles. So like I had to usually either breathe through like a mask or something so that it would, like I usually had a mask on my face just because it would make a warm cocoon around like of my body heating up the air I was breathing. Or I had like a blanket up or a scarf usually around my mouth just to breathe through that so that it was warmer. And the pain was terrible, and again, like just these large splotches all over my back. It was like purplish blue, and it was horrible. You know, I talk about how I almost died from MagFest, but I was this close. Again, if I had to go back into the hospital because they had to hook me up to an IV and just watch me because my organs were shutting down. Like it wasn't just like all of these horrible side effects. Like my body was stopped working, so they had to do something about that. And eventually, it was determined that it might be side effects, like all of the sensation, everything might be side effects of the gabapentin, the nerve blocker, which we had been increasing the dose because you don't just start at a high dose; you have to increase it slowly, and it dulls your nerves so that you can get the immunotherapy. But I think that my body just wasn't ready for it. Oh, I'm not Reggie Fils-Aimé. My body was not ready, and we had to like slowly get off of it because you can't just stop that, because we tried that and your body goes nuts. Nerves are very prone to addiction. So if you're taking anything that affects your nerves, they will go crazy if you stop it cold turkey. And the effects of that are worse than what I was getting, because that also would have killed me. So we had to slowly get off of this, which was torture because, you know, you had to wait weeks to lower the dose a little bit each time for my body to get used to it, knowing that this was causing the problems that I was currently feeling, and also getting the side effects of withdrawal as we slowly got off of it. So that was a month. That was the end of February through most of March, just recovering from that, 2017. So, after that, we went to the doctor, and the doctor said, okay, so this has been a fun time. But I think that instead of putting you back on medication, looking at scans and stuff, we think we're ready to take out the tumor. And as much of everything else as we possibly can, meaning what was in my hip. Because there's a large tumor growing out of my hip. Or there was. So, talk to the surgeon and, see when he can schedule you for surgery. Is the surgeon that I got the reports and everything is a very nice guy. It's like, we'll schedule you for the surgeon right after this appointment, and you can talk to him and, find a day for getting the adrenal gland removed and the adrenal tumor. As the tumor was growing out of the adrenal gland, so the whole thing had to come out. So we after that we went to the surgeon. He said, yeah, I was talking to the doctor. I have an opening on Thursday. This was Tuesday. I have an opening on Thursday. So if you want to, come in and do the surgery then. And we're just like, okay. So that week was fun trying to, record videos and things and get them all done and everything. I believe I was doing Golden Sun at the time. So that was a thing. That was the beginning of April. Or the end of March, beginning of April. Right, like the week before Passover in 2017. Yeah. It was an adventure. So I got the surgery. It went really well. They removed the tumor, the adrenal tumor. They removed one of my adrenal glands. Luckily, your body has another one, and it usually makes up for it. And the one that they removed wasn't doing anything anyway. It was dead and gone because of the tumor at that point. Luckily, the adrenals are on top of your kidneys. Luckily, I did not lose my kidney. They were worried that they would have to take it out also, but thankfully they did not. They also got as much of the hip tumor as they could, and I got some really nice scars out of it. I got, like, you can't see, but there's an abdominal scar across here, and there's a really big one that's just like a jagged line over there. And so they just removed as much as they could, and we got a scan after I recovered from that. And that recovering from abdominal surgery is very interesting. Like, from the back, what they were able to do, like the way that your back muscles are, they kind of go like around your spine like that, and your spine's in the middle. So since they were working on my spine, they just moved the muscles out of the way, which just made the muscles angry, but it didn't like cut them. And they just worked between the muscles. But with abdominal surgery, since you have an abdominal wall, they just have to make a slice right through it and open it up. So they have to stitch everything together and hope that your muscles kind of just morph back together. So just the rehabilitation from that was interesting. But the main part of the rehabilitation was move. Like, they're like, okay, it's been a day, we need you to sit up. And I'm like, excuse me? It's been 2 days, you need to get into that chair over there out of your bed. I'm like, I'm sorry, you want me to stand up? It's been 3 days, you should be walking. I'm like, what? But I did, and I was out in 3 days. So that was fun. But yeah, so we got a scan in May of that year, and it was remission. Everything that was still lighting up on the scans previously was just the dead stuff that they took out. So there was just little tiny pieces here and there because they couldn't get everything out of the hip, but the entire adrenal area was gone because the tumor was very conveniently encased in a baseball-sized casing, the calcified casing. So I got a few months off there, and starting in July of that year, I went on another very interesting drug called fenretinide, which I mixed into a drink. It tasted kind of like Tang, but like that was the purpose of essentially killing off the dead, killing off like any remaining cells, like just helping the body clean itself out there. And we got another scan in September. It was just 5 months out of the surgery. I got another scan just to see if anything was growing back still, and it was the same, which means I was in definite remission at that point. And that was when we were actually able to start celebrating. So at that point, it was 4 years and 4 months, 5 months from the first surgery that I was actually announced to be in remission. December of 2017, I got the port taken out because all I was doing was just coming into the hospital every 3 weeks to get it flushed to make sure nothing happened. But I hadn't gotten any IV medications since the beginning of the year, since the chemo, since the radiation. So it had been almost a solid year since I actually had it used for anything medicinal. So they're like, yo, do you want to get it taken out? And I'm like, yes, please. So I got that, the main thing of the port was that it was a tether. I needed to be near the hospital in case anything happened. Somehow it got an infection under the skin, but it needed to be flushed. So I needed to keep going back to the hospital to get that done. But that was done now. That's done. Now all I have again is that little cut scar. And that was the end of 2017. Last year, we're getting close now. We're getting close to current events. 2018, I started taking new medication again to help just make sure everything was staying dead. That's going to be the theme for the rest of it. Again, all of the medications I say I'm taking new medication or this and that and the other thing, they're all clinical trials. Even the radiation was a clinical trial. It was everything. Everything was a clinical trial. I have books written about me because of all the ways that I reacted badly to things that I shouldn't react badly to. It was like a running joke. It became a running joke in the hospital. All the nurses were in on this joke. Also from the fact that doing the putting the needle, essentially it's like putting a pin into the port, which had a really small area of doing it, was a challenge, just because of how positional it was. And it was not all the nurses were able to do it right, so it was a badge of pride if they were able to do it in the first shot, just sticking it in the right spot and getting it to draw blood or anything, doing it properly in the first try. It was yeah, I could do it. And again, it was a competition between the entire nursing staff of the oncology ward. But I was just, there were so many inside jokes from my treatment alone. I loved it. We were all part of it. My dad and I and my mom we were all laughing. The doctors loved it and the nurses loved it. Very nice people there. But yeah, so I started getting new medication again. These were things that I was taking to try to clean stuff out. I got really sick off of. It was bad. I was getting side effects up the wazoo from that. So we backed off on the dosage, and it helped out a lot. And I stayed on those for most of the year. Where we left off last year was that there was going to be an upcoming scan in May 2018. Last year's video was April, so we left off last year being, tentatively in remission with an upcoming scan to make sure. So the scan went well. Surprise, the scan went well. Starting in last August, the decision was made. We got a scan. It was showing everything was even better. It's they couldn't barely see anything. At that point, they were like, if we didn't know you had cancer, we wouldn't be treating you. We wouldn't think you did because of the scans, which is a really nice thing to say after almost 6 years, 5 years at that point. So in August, it was determined that I would just stop all chemo. No more chemo, ever. Hopefully ever. But no more chemo as part of my treatment. So I stopped the medication. I'm not going to get chemo again. I'm not going to get any sort of drugs or things to clean up anything or whatever. I have been since August, I have been off of medication that isn't my pain medication. Last year, the big thing of last year also, I started Celebrex. Because I was taking ibuprofen constantly, and that helped, but not a lot. And I started getting, because of the spinal surgery, and because I have rods and screws, and my back is just a mess, I have constant pain. I'm in constant pain. Again, I told you, like at the beginning, I have the numbness in my legs that has not gone away. After the surgery, I actually got numbness in the other leg, so both of my thighs have been numb for 6 years. It's maddening. But I'm also in constant pain. The Celebrex really helps. Like, the ibuprofen kind of staved it off, but I had to take it a lot. Celebrex, I'm down to only taking it in the morning, and it just kind of carries me through. Although, over the past week, I don't know if it's the weather or something, I've been in a severe amount of pain. I spent most of this week in bed. But that's usually related to the weather. We're in April, it's like raining half the time. I know when it's going to rain because I can feel the changes in pressure. But yeah, so we stopped the medication in August. I'm just taking stuff for a thyroid condition that's hereditary, and I'm taking pain meds, Celebrex. It was decided a couple months later that we were going to do radiation therapy. And this isn't the same as the radiation I got earlier. This is external. This is beam radiation. Or not beam. This is going to be X-ray. The beam radiation is slightly different. We decided to do X-ray because it covers a wider area. But so over the course of December and January, I just went in every day, every weekday, except for like the holidays and MagFest, which I took off. I just put on a gown, sat on a table, they played music, took like 20 minutes, machine went around, fired on all the areas that they knew the cancer was previously, and then I went home. But it was, every single day for, 24 visits. So, Monday through Friday. It was a little over a month, but like because of the holidays and everything, it got moved into mid-January. Side effects were none. I was fine for MagFest for once. It was just nice. Got friendly with the staff there. But yeah, that was after the radiation. We got another scan, and it actually was even better than previously because of the radiation. So I'm currently, after an hour and 8 minutes, as things stand now, I'm currently, after 6 years since the start of actually fighting the cancer, longer if you want to count when it started rearing its head, but after 6 years and surgeries and radiation and medications and side effects and hospital visits and more surgeries and everything else, I'm in remission. Things are looking good. The only things we have planned for the future right now are just scans every few months with increasing amount of time between them. There's this type of blood test that they do now that can detect the cancer, which is really cool. So that's going to be used as like an indication to see if like the cells are active. The only thing on the horizon really is if my back gives out, because the rods and screws that I have didn't set properly. But we're not sure if they didn't set properly when I first got them in, or they didn't set properly, or they've been getting worse over time. So that's the only thing we're going to have to see. The possibility exists, and I think it's going to happen at some point, but the possibility exists of me getting surgery to have the rods and screws either taken out, well, not taken out because we have to make sure the fusion happens, replaced, and the fusion redone. It won't be as bad a surgery as the original one I got 6 years ago because there's nothing else, no tumors to remove. But they would have to re-glue everything back together, try to fix the screws in the new place. It'd still be involved. But right now, everything seems to be holding. It's just painful. A life is pain. But the future is the state of the union is good, as they say. The future is bright. I made it through a lot of really bad stuff. That's just talking about the medical side of things. There's been a lot going on mentally that I've had to deal with over the past bunch of years. I've been in therapy for over a year now, just trying to work through the post-traumatic stress and a lot of the other stuff that's been going on. And it's been a struggle, but I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank the people that watched an hour and 10 minutes of video. God, I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking with me. You know, no matter how long you've been around, you know, whether you've been from the beginning or recent or any time in between, I want to thank you for sticking around, for helping me survive this, because it's been an ordeal. And there have been points, you know, we discussed it, there have been points where either I didn't think I was going to make it or I didn't want to make it. But, you know, you guys, my family, and just the people around me have all made the trip so much more bearable. And I appreciate that from the bottom of my soul. I appreciate that. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for sticking around. Thank you very much for helping me live. And here's to great stuff in the future. Next year, hopefully the video will just be like, there's nothing new to talk about. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.